Welcome to Mama's Little Homestead. Today we are going to be showing you how we installed these arch trellises. We installed 7 trellises in less than 2 hours, and honestly it would have taken us a lot less time if it weren't for the blazing heat. We have had so many 100-degree days in a row. I think it's record shattering, but anyway, we ended up taking a lot of breaks, so I think it would have taken a lot less than 2 hours if we hadn't taken breaks between them, which means that you can do this same project in probably under an hour. These arched trellises, I have been waiting to do this project for so long because simply by installing these over our paths, we are adding, it's like adding 5 4x8 growing spaces to our small homestead where we are trying to grow a majority of our food for ourselves. It is game changing to have these spaces installed. I am so excited to take you along and show you how we did this project step by step and give you my best tips as somebody who is not the most engineering minded, not the most handy person. My husband is. We also did 2 straight trellises for growing things like tomatoes, peas. We'll show you how we did that build as well. I'm so excited, and let's get started. So step 1, my husband is using a T-post driver to hammer in the T-posts. We used 4-foot T-posts to save money, but you could use 6-foot or 5-foot T-posts if you want a little bit more stability, especially if you're in a really windy climate. I might recommend that. My husband, who is the engineer, assures me that that is not necessary, so he's probably right. We got these T-posts for about $4. For the arches, we are using OK brand cattle panels. They ran us about $31 at our local farm supply store. They do have them at Tractor Supply for about $1 more at $32. If you are watching this in 2024, that's the cost. If you're watching some of those builds from 4 or 5 years back where they were $20 trellises, so exciting. Well, sorry folks, they are $31, $32 at this point. I cannot believe that they have gone up so much. That's insane. That's inflation for you, I guess. So for each trellis, you are going to need a 50-inch by 16-foot cattle panel and 4 T-posts of between 4 and 6 feet. You could also use rebar for this, and they can cut it for you at the hardware store. And to attach them here, we are using zip ties. Now, it took me a little while to get the right zip tie technique. So for those of you who have intuitive engineering minds, you could skip this part. But basically, if you just put the zip tie around the post, it will just slip up and down, and it's not very secure. So what we did is we went diagonally. So you can see right here, this goes over where these posts cross. If it were to just be around, it would just slip right off up here. So it is much sturdier if you can get it to go over, like kind of kitty corner over this right here. So you'll see he's trying to teach me how to tie these zip ties here, and it takes a little while. It takes a hot minute. This is the first one we did, and I will say anytime that we try to do something like this together, it's a little bit of a marital adventure. He is very engineering minded. I am not at all. We are very complementary in our skills, which means he sees and understands things that seem plain to him that are just baffling to me. He likes to tease me that I have 2 master's degrees and 0 common sense. And nowhere do I feel that more than in the garden. Y'all, I do have 2 master's degrees, and the lessons that have been in the garden have been more difficult and more hard-won, more heartbreaking than anything I ever learned from books or in the classroom. Gardening is not for the faint of heart, but I just want to encourage you, keep trying. It is so worth it. Sometimes things work out really well, sometimes they are total fails, but that is one of the best ways to learn, and it definitely keeps us humble. So on this build, we only hammered in 3 T-posts before zip tying the cattle panel to the T-posts. The subsequent builds, we actually just hammered all 4, and at the same time, it was no problem. So if you're doing it yourselves, I would say do all the T-posts first. We measured out 40 inches between T-posts so that we could put them on not the very end, but the second to the end Mr. Engineer said that was the most stable way to create the trellises. So what I'm doing now is just trying to get them as tight as possible so they are as secure as possible. Then we went around and added a third zip tie to what I had done at the top and at the bottom. You can see this is where my husband goes around to check my work, and whoop, slides right off, folks. So that's why it's important to use that kitty corner method. Otherwise, your zip tie is not going to last you very long. We also put one in front of this gate for grapes, but the wind knocked the camera over. So I guess there are as many lessons in videography as there are in gardening. So you can see back there, again, filming mistake. That one did not get captured, but we are working on the third of the arches right now, just pulling that over the fence that I made. You could see that video, a commentary on why we have to have a fence back here is a video a few videos back, and it is basically just a long rant about the way that people have been treating my garden. On to the last arch over here, and at the back of this garden is where we do the vertical trellises. So I'm getting a lot more efficient, a lot better at this point with the zip ties. It took me forever to put two and two together, that they have to have the ridged side on the inside. Save you some time figuring that out if you are engineering inept as I am. And here I'm just trying to explain my vision of expanding the beds and figuring out the vertical. We're hammering in 3-foot T-posts instead because that's what we had on hand, and it worked just fine for those shorter vertical trellises. And then here I'm just going around and adding an extra zip tie to the middle for added security. Okay, and here I am digging the holes for our David Austen climbing roses. This is the only trellis we're not actually using to grow food. I will show you a close-up later at the end of this video. They are so beautiful. These are, I want to say, Princess Margaret climbing roses. They have so many petals. They're just magnificent. So here you have it. We have added 5 of these trellises to our growing space. Now, I will say that the downside of using something like this, of hardscaping your garden, while it adds a lot of space to be able to grow things like squashes, melons. We're going to grow loofah next year to grow our own sponges. I'm so excited about that. Apparently they go crazy, so we'll see if we need to maybe even add another arch. Don't tell my husband. The downside is if you want to practice something like crop rotation, it does limit and sort of box you in because you do need to grow your vining things on the arched trellises. So having a few of them does allow for a little bit more of that rotation than if you were to only grow one vining plant on an arched trellis and you were to grow that same thing in the same area every year. If you struggle, for example, with squash bugs like we do, you're not going to be able to get that same crop rotation in. For me, the benefits of the added space in our small area are more than worth it. So now I'm just heading down to the other side of the garden. I just want to show you one of our straight up and down trellises so you can get a feel of that. So we did this one straight up and down, but you could also take these and cut them in half and make a pyramid shape so that it would grow kind of like a teepee instead of the arch. That's really helpful if you don't have access to a trailer. You can fit them, you cut them before you load them, put them in a truck bed, or I think you'd have to measure for yourself and take your upholstery into your own hands, but you could probably do it in a minivan if you could put all the seats down. I'm not too sure about that. My husband let us buy a minivan, so I actually don't know how much space is in one of those. You could also flip this. You could get taller T-posts and do, instead of doing it more horizontal style, hot dog style, no, hamburger style, you could do it hot dog, up and down, vertical, and the taller side, going up and down, and that would allow you to put it, say, on the end of your raised bed, and that can be helpful because you want to be able to orient. And as you can see, the sun is behind me and it goes east, west. You're going to see that anything that is on the north side of the growing bed is going to get shaded, and that's going to be something that we have to take into consideration. So that could be to your advantage. You could grow your shaded plants. If you wanted to grow greens or cilantro, then you could intentionally place it so that your vining crop shades out that little portion of the garden bed. So it's all just about being creative with the space you have and just understanding the way that the shadows are going to move, which takes It sounds complicated. It's not. It just takes going out into your garden a couple of times during the day during the height of the summer and seeing where are the shadows. And if you can recognize shadows, then it's pretty simple. What grows well in the shadow, what is going to do even better maybe with a little bit of space. So it's an advantage or a disadvantage depending on what kind of crop you want to grow in that area that gets a little bit more shady, or just simply placing anything that is going to be on your trellis on the northernmost side of your garden so that it's not shading anything out. And so you guys, this is where our David Austen climbing roses are planted next to the trellis. Look, I mean, how beautiful. Just how gorgeous is that? I have been dreaming about roses growing over this space, and I know it'll be probably 3 years before they get all the way over the top of this trellis, but it's going to be so worth the wait. Just the fact that this project has come to reality, I am just tickled pink that this is finally in our space. It's going to be so beautiful and I can't wait. I will of course share it with you over the next few years as it grows up and over. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you want to catch more of what's going on in our garden, we've got lots planned. We've got garden tours, gardening over the winter, soil blocking, all kinds of things coming up, and I would love to share that with you. Thank you for joining. Please, whatever it is, like and subscribe. Thanks.